All right, so on the red side, whose name I'm not entirely sure, they're going for Widow, Claymore, Scimitar, Kitsune, Blackbird, Moa, Raptor, Skybreaker. So some pretty top-heavy DPS there with those two Widows and the Claymore for Lynx. That's pretty chunky. A lot of ECM on the field here as well with that Kitsune. What have the blue team brought?
So Flydeck going with that double Leshak, Balgorn, Pontifex, double Arbitrator, two Deacons, a Griffin, and a Nereus. I would have to imagine that's possibly using the utility mids for either some sort of remote tracking or then filling your cargo hold up with capsticks for your Leshak and the Balgorn. Speaking of the Balgorn, as I kind of look over, that is a gun Balgorn. It is not full newt. Both teams did warp in at 50, trying to play positionally, as we see the Raptor of PRE kiting around the arena, trying to look for an angle to come into the flight deck core.
Yeah, the blue team sort of balling up in the backfield there. Jam's been spread across both the Shacks, the Balgorn, the Arbiter, and the Griffin there from the red team. Those jams can be pretty devastating for the Leshaks, who, of course, the DPS spools up. And almost all their E-War is completely potentially jammed out as well, with the Arbitrators for control and the Griffin to counter jam. At the moment, not a huge amount of DPS being applied. Some DPS landing on one of the Leshaks, but it really is just sort of tickling the scrotum of that Leshak right now.
Yeah, we see a bit of a smart bomb effect applied as we see Vespas being sent onto that Leshak, but Leshaks using smart bombs in their utility makes a lot of sense given the amount of drones we've been seeing for damage or ECM thus far. Also repairs. We're seeing that there's some heavy armor maintenance bots being left out in the field that the Raptor is shooting at. So far, teams just kind of jockeying for position. Speaking of position, this Leshak of alternative Muvlub weebs out once again in Twitch chat, getting caught down and will be the primary.
Yeah, I mean, so far it looks like it could be okay. It depends if those Deacons are jammed or not. The red team have gone all in on ECM, as I see a whole bunch of ECM drones as well. They're not even using rep bots. They're just like, how much ECM can we fit to a single comp? This is the answer, all of it. Alternative Muvlov, not really being repped, but not a huge amount of damage coming from the red team. Meanwhile, the Moa of Fang Tsero is actually taking quite a lot of damage and is not getting any reps from his mate in the Scimitar there.
Yeah, I mean, Moa is known for having a bit of a resist buff, but I mean, it's still a Tech 1 ship, and two Leshaks that spool up on you, if they're not totally jammed out, are going to chunk you eventually. Fang Zero starting to stabilize a little bit. Maybe the Widow getting some jams off at this point.
Yeah, I suspect that the Griffin is doing a bit of good work there in kind of balancing out the ECM a little bit because it looked like the Scimitar perhaps got jammed by that Griffin. He'll, of course, be able to try and limit some of the opposing E-War as well, and that's probably why they're choosing to put some drones on him and chase him down. This is a bit of a stalemate at this point because I mean, the attack bar on the red side is absolutely girth-tastic, but look how much of it is being applied. Almost none of it. They're really struggling to get anything actually down onto this blue team here, who have a much bigger tank.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. We see that those Widows appear to be torpedo fit. So now that they've actually closed into range and are sitting on top of Leshaks at 0, I don't necessarily like that call with the Widows. You can kite back a little bit and not be on top of literally everything, but maybe they have smart bombs. I'm not seeing... yeah, we're seeing smart bomb effects go off, and that would be the remainder of the repair drones on top of those two Leshaks.
Yeah, that will be problematic to say the least here for the blue team. The Deacons are going to be getting hit by these smart bombs as well, so it's going to be just damage spread around, which is quite hard for those little ships to deal with. They can rep fast, their cycle is very, very short, but they have to move around the arena in order to apply their rep. So if the other team starts splitting the DPS and forcing those Deacons to move around, then it could be very, very difficult for them to keep up.
So you might say, well, how did the Widows close to range? I mean, the blue team has a Balgorn. That Balgorn was held down by a Skybreaker at this point. That Skybreaker, basically a single point ship, completely mitigating the utility of that Balgorn to actually do its job. And then once the Balgorn was pinned down, the Widows just went around and are now sitting on top of those two Lashaks.
Yeah, those widows look like they might have forgot to fit any form of tank though, because they are just getting chewed through by the DPS coming out of the blue team, and the bar for the blue team isn't even that big right now of what they could potentially be doing. But that widow is absolutely melting. As soon as he hits armor, he's just going to disappear. I think the last widow must have got caught with the scimitar, got jammed, and got no reps, so he just got annihilated. The second widow hanging on in very low shield. He's only got like 5-10% shield left. There he goes into armor now, and immediately all the way through armor with those fully spilled Lashaks at this point. Those beams have not been broken, so he's going to drop down. And at this point, that is most of the damage of the red team gone.
Yeah, I mean, I can't help but feel you're bringing torpedo widows. I mean, why? You want your ECM to be able to be utilized at standoff range and jam things out. I get that you don't have a lot of damage going for an ECM comp, but like really, the play is not to have your torpedo widow sit on top of a Lashak at 0, letting it spool on top of you.
Yeah, I feel like this is one of these instances when the theory crafters plugged in some stuff into PyFat and then saw the DPS number was a very, very large number and thought, well, I mean, this is great. Look how high that number is. We can't possibly lose. But as it happens, you can. There's other numbers that are relevant as well in this game. Application is one of them. Tank is another. But the DPS number being high doesn't always necessarily mean good things.
Yeah, and speaking of rep bots that we were talking about some dying earlier, we can see that there's still a cloud of rep bots just sitting on an alternative Muvlev, doing absolute work keeping it up. And one of the downsides of having a shield setup is you're not going to have a lot of a drone bay when you're going with Widows, you're going with Blackbirds and Moas. Ships that are not known for their ability to have a lot of that drone bay. Now that GG's lost their Claymore, they're not going to have Lynx. They've lost to their Widows. We can see that they still got a pretty solid attack bar, but they're down 62 points with 3 minutes left. There's no way they bring it back in time. They're just out of damage.
Yeah, absolutely. The deacons, even if they get jammed, are probably not going to be jammed long enough for anything left. I mean, really, it's now just a single MOA for a DPS. I mean, Skybreaker, I guess, can do DPS, but it's as likely to do DPS to his own friends than the enemies. At this point, it's 2 minutes and 48 seconds for them to think about what they've done wrong, which is bring Torpedo Widows and set them on top of the shacks.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I would have liked to have seen from the Skybreaker once the Balgorn finally did break free is just put the Skybreaker on top of your Lashak and Widow, brawl at 0 and just use it to kill drones. You're out of rep drones yourself. Just use it to kill the cloud of drones. Now that it's been buffed to hit 10 targets, I believe, instead of 5, you're eventually going to break the lights and then the medium rep drones.
Yeah, absolutely. And these are all very sensible suggestions. I feel like perhaps this wasn't the tactic that the red team here actually went for, which has resulted in them, well, not winning this particular matchup. It looks like the flight deck, who are the blue team, are going to maybe take a clean sweep if they can finish off the last couple of ships in the next minute 50 or so.
Yeah, I mean, Flight Deck is currently in the series up 1-0, and I mean, they're just going to cleanly, as you just said, this is going to be a perfect. I don't know if they'll pick up the Scimitar and the Kitsune or the Raptor here in the last, 90 seconds of the match, but excellent, target calling and excellent piloting. But I can't help but feel that like long GGs, as we've been reinforcing again and again, torpedo widows, man, it's not a thing.
It's not a thing. Unless you're a pulsar, I mean, that might work. Um, yeah, I don't really know what else they could have done, to be honest. Like, it looked like it was going to go their way at the start. So many jams appeared to land, and the red team seemed to have the control advantage over blue. However, once they lost a little bit of control and things started to turn the other way, the DPS ramp up from those Lashaks, plus that gun Balgorn, and then the control from those arbitrators, probably fit with some guidance disruptors, making those torpedoes apply even less of their theoretical large number DPS. It just meant that it just did not work. The scimitar is down. It's just a raptor and a skybreaker left at this point. The raptor is jammed, grappled, webbed, scram, muted. He's basically everything. So he's going to be disappearing as well. And then we will probably go back to the studio in about 28 seconds.
Yeah, I mean, we'll talk about this more when we do get back to the studio, but I mean, I really like the choice of ships on the flight deck to really augment that Leshak and Balgorn setup. You have the Pontifex for links, you have double arbitrators, you have two rep ships, you have a Griffin to try to do counter E-War against the Widows for all of 3 points, and then you have a Nearest, which has a ton of mid slots. That's why you bring it. You give remote. Sensor strength to the rest of your ships, or you boost it with remote tracking. All things we will talk about on the desk in just a few minutes.